Hi everyone. So welcome to our live webinar. My name is Wasim Ahmed, and I was one of the researchers working on this project. And in terms of the format for today, I'll briefly speak about the running order now. So I will be introducing the speakers. So if you can introduce
Hello, I'm Dilek Onkal. I'm Professor of Business Information Systems and Analytics at the Department of Marketing Operations and Systems at Northumbria University. Welcome to the webinar.
Hi, and I'm Shari De Baets. I'm from Belgium, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Ghent University in the project management group of the Applied Economics department.
Yep, so the first part of the webinar is to give you some more information and background on our project and the experiment we ran. And then after that, there'll be a presentation by myself which looks at the use of social media more generally for academic research projects. And then more specifically, I'll speak about our own research project, what we did, and some of the benefits of engaging with new forms of digital media. We've also been working on a project app, an end of a year project app, which has implemented some of our results into the app, and it's got some quizzes, financial literacy quizzes for people to complete, and we've integrated some of the blogs we've been working about as well into the app, and it'll be available on both Android and Apple marketplaces, and it'll be available free of charge. So in terms of the first talk, so we can get that underway.
Yeah. I'll be giving some information about the research that we did. And I can see on the screen that the letters are flipped, so I don't know if we can fix that while I'm introducing.
I'm not sure why that is.
Yeah.
So that's not happened
Well,
before.
never mind. I'll just tell my story.
So we can send the slides. As well.
Yeah, we will send the slides afterwards if you're interested in them. I'll be using them as sort of guidance, but unfortunately, because of the camera, it's currently flipped around, so you won't be able to read it, but I'll read it for you. Um, so first of all, why is this project so interesting? We thought it was very interesting because we're working on a very relevant topic, and that is the fact that people have difficulty saving for emergencies. And such emergencies, it can be something that can be rather small. For instance, your car breaking down, or in fact, your car breaking down can bring a huge cost with itself. And it's something that always seems to happen at the wrong time. An even worse scenario could be that you lose your job all of a sudden and you lose your income. Now, a study has shown in the UK that on average, people that lose their income on average would only last 18 days, so they don't have enough an emergency fund to last more than that. And a general rule of thumb for an emergency fund is that you should have 3 times your monthly expenses as a backup. So, for instance, your monthly expenses, including food, electricity, and all kinds of bills, add up to £1,000. You should have £3,000 in backup just in case a scenario like this happens. So you have some leeway in finding a new job, or you have some leeway in fixing your car and still have money left for the rest of the month. So many households don't have the necessary savings, and this is of course not just in the UK. It's in the US, it's in Europe, it's everywhere. Um, and this can lead to economic insecurity because if you don't have that backup, you're really vulnerable, and you're vulnerable to falling into economic disarray, and you're at risk for future problems. There are a few biases that are associated with this. And so this is my field of research. I study decision making and heuristics and biases. Um, and one of those biases is the fact that we are very present oriented. So we think more about the present than we do about the future. The present is something that is much more concrete for us. We also prefer instant gratification over long-term benefits. And psychologists have these tests that they've done quite a number of times, and the results are always the same. And what they ask people is, what would you like best? Would you like to receive £50 now or £100 in a year's time? And the majority of people consistently chooses to have £50 now because we're so oriented towards the present. We rather have our reward now than a larger reward in the future. Another bias that comes into play is that we underestimate the future rise in expenses compared to the future rise in income. So we think that our income will rise faster than our expenses will, but unfortunately, it's usually the other way around. We also consistently underestimate the risk of future expenses, even when we've just had them happen. For instance, last month, my car broke down, and I don't expect that to happen again, but of course, there are other expenses that may happen again. You can have a leak in your roof suddenly occurring, especially with the weather we're experiencing now. So it's not just that, it's also we have this infallible optimism. People are always over optimistic. We always think it's not going to happen to us, these bad things. It's more likely to happen to other people. And we really ignore pessimistic scenarios and we focus on the positive ones. So if you take all these biases together, you have a general underestimation of what future expenses might look like. So we think it's not going to happen to us. And if it happens to us, we also think that it's going to be a lower expense than what it usually is. So that's what we looked into. That was basically the problem statement of our study. We looked into the idea that can we help people to better forecast their expenses? Can we help people to do better financial decision making? And one of the things we thought about was let's inform them on the risk of certain things. And let's see what the effect is of this risk. So what we did is we asked people to make an initial forecast. We asked them to make an initial forecast of what they think their expenses will be for the coming 3 months, what their target savings will be, so what they want to save for the coming 3 months, and what they think they will realistically save, so predicted savings. After that, we gave them a scenario that entailed some risk. So we said, imagine that this might happen to you. And then afterwards, we said, now that you know this information about risk, how will you adjust your expenses? And I'll make it a bit more concrete later on. So we did a pilot test where we just asked, before we did the actual whole experiment, whole study, we asked people, can you describe for us an event that you think might impact your life on a financial basis, that might impact your financial decision making? And we had quite some examples coming through that we could categorize into 2 broad categories. A first category was income loss. So for most people said, well, it would be very impactful if I lost my job, or if I had to go from full-time to part-time, for instance. So this was the income loss category. The second category was the expense category. And expenses could be something breaking down, like the car breakdown that we saw. But it could also be something positive, like for instance, you're going to the wedding of your best friend. Well, then of course you have some expenses associated with that, if not only for the gift that you're giving. So we decided that we would, in our study, look at 2 different scenarios. We would look at an income loss scenario, and we would look at an expenses scenario. We said, well, we want to know what the effect is of providing this risk information to people. So let's divide it up into 3 categories. A high risk category, a category that says, well, there is a risk, but it's pretty low, and then a category that says there's no risk at all. That sort of serves as a neutral point for comparing our results. So this is, of course, a bit hard to see, but what the experiment looked like, and I'll describe it for you, is that people were given text boxes for 3 months, so 3 text boxes next to each other. And as I said, first for predicted expenses, then for target savings, what you want to save, then for predicted savings, what you realistically think you will save. And in the following page, we asked them, okay, well, we're talking about savings, but generally there are 3 broad categories of savings. We have retirement savings, we have emergency fund savings, and we have personal savings. If you would divide over these 3 categories for the 3 months, what would your forecasts be? Once people have filled out all these text boxes with their initial forecast, we gave them a scenario. And for instance, the expense scenario is like this. So you come home after a busy day at work, and you really want to go relax, but you open your door and you see that there's a flood. Everything's underwater. So you get really anxious about this, and you call you call a local plumber, and he comes as fast as he can. It takes an hour, and meanwhile the water is just spraying. You don't know what's happening, and the plumber comes by, and after investigating, he says, "Look, one of the pipes has burst, and I've got some unfortunate news for you. It's going to cost quite a lot." And the amount that he says adds up to 80% of your monthly income. How will this affect your financial decision making? Now, the 80% scenario is the high risk scenario. In the low risk scenario, we said 20% of your income. And in the no risk scenario, we said, you're very lucky, everything is covered by your insurance. Now, we had the same thing for the income loss scenario, where we said people, you're arriving at work, there's a bit of a strange atmosphere happening, there's some gossip going around, it's not going well with the company. And you're invited into an impromptu meeting with all the employees, and you hear that people are going to get fired. And you hear the unfortunate news from your manager that in your department, 80% of the people, so 4 out of 5 people, will be let go. This is again the high risk scenario. The low risk scenario, as you then may imagine, is 20% of the people will be let go, or 1 in 5. And the no risk scenario is you're quite lucky because in your department, nobody will be let go. So then we ask people, how impactful do you think this is? How likely do you think this is to happen? Just, that we have an idea or what the effect was of our scenarios. And then you could probably see this as well, because it doesn't really matter if it's split. We gave people this graph, and it's a graph with a line on it that represents their initial forecast. So they first received a graph with the 3 values they forecasted for their future expenses. So in this case, this person thought that they would save £125 in the first month, £190 in the second month, and again £125 in the third month. And we said, now that you know this information, being either unexpected expenses or an unexpected income loss, how will this affect your expected monthly expenses? We asked that for expenses in the first graph, they could just pick up the data point and drag it up or down if they thought they would have more expenses or less expenses. We asked that for target savings and for expected savings. And we asked that for the 3 categories of savings. So every time what they inputted in the text boxes before they received the information was now shown graphically. And after receiving the risk scenario, they could adjust it downwards or upwards, depending on how they felt the information impacted their savings and expenses estimates. We also asked them about their financial well-being, which is a general survey scale where you ask some items like, I feel like I need to have a hard time to make ends meet, items like that. We also asked them about their financial knowledge, and we simply asked them the question, how would you rate your financial knowledge compared to other people? And then we also had some sort of mini quiz, sort of mini test that, by the way, you will be able to find on the app as well, where we tested people's knowledge on things like inflation. So here are some results. You can see the blue bars. These are the total number of participants for no risk, low risk, and high risk. And you can see the orange bars are people who never changed anything. So they got the information, but they decided, well, I don't think this really affects my forecasts. And it is, of course, logical that there's quite some people in a no-risk condition because they have essentially nothing happening to them. So the most, what we call low changers, can be found in a no-risk condition. The least amount of people who didn't change, of course, in the high-risk condition, because it's what you would expect. It's most likely that you will change something if you end up in a high risk, you have high risk chance of either getting fired or have a high amount of expenses. If you look at perceived impact, we also find a quite logical result. So again, this is no risk, low risk, and high risk. The blue bars are the expense scenario, the orange bars are the income loss scenario. So what we see is overall, with increased risk, we see an increased impact. But again, this is of course something that you would expect. Now these are the results, the means of the initial estimates. This means that these are the results before the scenario was given, so before the risk information was given. The first bar here is predicted expenses, and as you can see, this is the largest bar of them all. So people, unfortunately, it's the truth in our life, is that we will have more expenses than we will have savings. These two bars are the target savings and the predicted savings. And you can see here that the target savings are higher than the predicted savings. People, their aspiring target is higher than what you think they will realistically save. And this is important for people who want to, like us, develop an app where we want to encourage people, we want to nudge people towards more savings. Let's talk about target savings. Let's use that word target, because it will lead to higher estimates. Now, these are the categories. We have emergency fund savings, retirement savings, and personal savings. Retirement savings is the lowest of them all. And this is something that agrees with lots of literature and lots of studies that have happened, is that people don't have much retirement savings and don't really think about it yet. A lot of our inputs, and what made the mean go down a lot, was that a lot of people always entered zero for retirement savings. So they were not really thinking about retirement. They were more thinking about savings in the sense of, I need to have a little bit of backup, emergency fund savings, or personal savings. If I want to go to a wedding, if I want to go to a holiday, I need to save up a bit. Now, if we take these three categories together, and we compare them to predicted savings, we see that the summation of the three categories leads to a higher number than simple predicted savings. So if we want to nudge people towards saving more, we should actually ask them to think about different categories, because this will lead them to put a bit more money aside. If we can tell them, like, think about emergency funds, think about retirement, and think about personal savings. So, we gave them the scenario, and then we looked at how much people changed, and we looked at percentage change, because of course you have people for which £20 is quite low savings, but you have people who save £300. So we look at percentages just to be able to compare across different things. Now, what is interesting is the effect on predicted savings according to the risk category. So if we look at high risk, we see that there is a downward adjustment of predicted savings. So this is logical. Something risky is going to happen. You think that you're probably going to be able to save less. In low risk, nothing's happening. There's a very thin line here, but you can't really say it's anything meaningful. Now, this is interesting. No risk. So these were people who received a scenario that's described a possible risk, but it also said it is not happening to you. Yet people reacted in such a way that they increased their savings. So this is the zero line, and they increased their savings upwards. And it's sort of like they're faced with the possibility that something might happen. So they are taking measures in case it might happen to them. It becomes more salient in their mind, like this is a possibility. So if we look at the two scenarios, as you remember, we had a scenario on expenses, we had a scenario on income loss. In the expense scenario, we saw an increase in predicted expenses, which is of course logical. We say to you, you are going to have more expenses, so people adjusted their expenses on their graph upwards. Now in the income loss scenario, strangely enough, we saw a decrease in the expenses. This is something that we hadn't expected, but if you think about it, it's sort of logical. If you're faced with a future loss of income, you're going to try to balance out that loss of income with less expenses. So what people did is they thought I should take my expenses down a bit because I will have less income. This again are bars that display the no adjustments per category. So this means that people did not adjust on the graph for predicted expenses, target savings, predicted savings, and these are the categories. And again, as we can see here for the retirement savings category, almost 90% of the people did not adjust their retirement savings. So it was zero to begin with, and it often stayed zero. And people who had a bit of retirement savings plans did not change it at all. The thing that was most changed was the predicted expenses and the predicted savings. So what are now the conclusions of this study that we have done so far? First of all, if we want to nudge people, so if we want to push people a bit towards more savings, we should talk about targets. We should have people set targets for themselves, not just ask them how much you want to save, but tell them, set a target for yourself on how much you want to save. The next thing that we can do is look at those categorical breakdowns. So rather than talking about the general savings category, we could look at retirement savings, personal savings, and emergency fund savings. If all three are summated, you will have a higher savings amount than looking at the overall category. One of the things that I haven't mentioned yet in those categorical breakdowns, so I have mentioned that retirement savings were often zero to begin with. But an interesting change that we saw is that after giving people risk information, people started transferring the money from retirement savings and from personal savings to the emergency fund. So if we want to have people to have a large emergency fund, we can talk about those, we can simply give them information on risks. And there are websites out there, budget planner websites, websites with statistics on how often does a car break down, what is the average cost, what is the average cost on your house and your apartment that you may have. Now, the effect of risk information is, as I've said, it was different for the expense scenario versus the loss income scenario. So expense scenario led to increased expenses, while the income loss scenario led to decreased expenses. And we also talked about the fact that, strangely enough, for the no-risk scenario, we saw people actually upping their savings, and we call this the lucky break effect or the near-miss effect. So people have something like, oh, this could have happened to me. It didn't happen, but maybe I should take some measures for the future in case this would take place. Now, to mention again, this research was supported by the Think Forward initiative. There is an app on the way, but Dr. Wasim Ahmed will tell you some more about that.
So I was double checking on the live stream, it appears fine for the text.
Okay.
Hi, so in this talk, I'm going to be speaking about engaging with social media for academic research projects and some of the benefits that it can bring. And specifically, I'll be speaking a bit about our project as well. So it's been argued that the last 10 to 15 years has been a golden generation for social media platforms, with the best of the new platforms, the new features that have been very innovative, things like Facebook, Twitter, Vivo, and so forth, which have large user bases. And especially in the last 5 to 10 years, platforms such as Twitter and Facebook are being now used by academics to share research articles, network with each other, and so forth. So they're providing a way for academics to expose their research to other people. And for academics and academic research projects, there's a number of benefits for engaging with and using social media platforms. So you can use social media to follow other academics. You can use it for connecting with people from industry, and it's also possible to raise the profile of a research project. And you can also use it for further research opportunities, and you can also network with colleagues as well. It also allows you to stay up to date with recent developments in research as well. So there's a lot of academics actively using these platforms. And if you're working on a project and you're disseminating it on Twitter, there's additional people who might be working on similar things, who might tweet you for collaboration and so forth. So even in our project, when we were tweeting on the project's Twitter account, we got people working on similar things who were tweeting at us with useful information and advice. In terms of different social media platforms, the most popular platform is Facebook with around 1.8 billion monthly active users, closely followed by YouTube and Instagram. And there's also platforms that have merged things like Instagram and Pinterest. More and more people are using these different types of platforms. In our specific project, we were utilizing Twitter and Facebook. And I found that Twitter, especially for academic purposes, is one of the strongest platforms because there's a dedicated community of academics using the platform, sharing information and so forth related to their research. So Twitter is possibly one of the most beneficial platforms. So if you are working on an academic research project, to use to disseminate content and learn. In terms of some general tips and suggestions, if you're using Twitter, is to make sure you have an up-to-date and complete Twitter profile, Twitter bio. So you should have a good banner picture. So if you look at our rainy day account, we clearly have a logo that matches our research project. You should have a good profile picture, a good user handle as well. So it could be the name of the project, or if you're making an individual account, it should be your name. And alongside that, you should have a good user bio as well that you can use, so people, if they're viewing your profile, they can actually see. So in terms of if you're starting out on Twitter, if you're an academic starting out on Twitter, you can start to tweet news articles and papers related to your research topic. And a good idea is to use Twitter to see if it's possible to start tweeting alongside other conferences and for networking as well. So if there's a conference occurring similar to the research area of your project, you can actually tweet using the conference hashtag and tell people about your project. So it's an additional new way to get people interested in your project and lead possible further collaboration. Another thing that we were doing is when we were tweeting on Twitter, we would cross-post. So we would post content onto Twitter, then I was cross-posting on Facebook as well, because there were some people who were following us on Twitter who weren't necessarily on Facebook. So that was one of the tactics we used. And for starting out on Twitter, we can create a Twitter account and then tweet interesting content. Another suggestion is to try and find academics who are in your discipline, and you can begin to tweet relevant content towards them. You can also use existing hashtags in your tweets, and if there isn't a community for your project, you can also create one as well for your discipline. And in some of the tweets we were sending, we will use various hashtags. One hashtag I could recommend for anyone working on a research project or for individual academics is to use the hashtag PhD chat hashtag, which is followed by a lot of academics all around the world, and it brings in a lot of activity every day. So if you're using that hashtag, you've got a lot of people who can possibly see your project work. Depending on the specific project, you might have specific hashtags related to your project as well. Another important aspect for academic researchers is if you're using Twitter, Twitter has inbuilt analytics that you can use. So for each individual tweet, you can see the number of impressions, the number of engagements, video engagements for each tweet, but you can also look at the engagement overall for Twitter as well. So you can have a project account and you can see how each tweet is received, and then you can have an analytics dashboard that shows you all the different reach that you are getting. So you can see what types of content are working for you, what types of other content might receive more likes, more impressions. Because sometimes you might get some content, not many people are liking or sharing, but when you look at the analytics, a large number of people are actually viewing it and clicking the links. So just some general tips are to use general hashtags if you're an academic, hashtag PhD chat, hashtag academic Twitter. Another interesting thing you can do is if you have a hashtag in mind, but you don't know what other hashtags go, you can use a service called Hashtagify, where you can put your hashtag, for instance, finance, and it will show you a number of correlated hashtags. So you use this service, type in finance or money, and it will give you a list of other hashtags that are most frequently associated with your hashtag. So it's a really useful way of finding out when this community uses this hashtag, what are the correlations with that, where else could you actually spread your message. So here is an example of using this tool. So if we use the hashtag sports science, just an example, it'll give you a list of correlated hashtags, things like nutrition, swimming, football, that people use alongside this hashtag that you might want to use to share your content and so forth. There's also different models developed in marketing that academics can and possibly should use when disseminating content. One is the AI/BI model for content generation. And it says that when you are developing content to share on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, you should try and create attention for your research. And you can monitor this by tracking number of visitors, impressions, page visits, and so forth. So you should be content that is actually drawing attention to you. Another area is to generate interest as well. So rather than just tweet, you publish this article, you try and generate some interest by trying to tell a story by your academic research project that generates interest, and then ultimately you might lead to engagement, interactions, and reshares. Another aspect is you need to create a desire for people to actually download your research articles to visit your blog. And you can measure this by number of followers, repeated visits. So the content you send should communicate desire for the person reading the post to actually download it. So you should give a sufficient amount of information. One tactic is to actually put the abstract, screenshot of an abstract into the paper or explain the findings and how it could be important for future research before publishing it. And another aspect is if you want people to actually download your paper and you write an article, you should have a call to action where you actually have the article or other links embedded in your content, and you encourage people to actually go and click on those. Another important thing to note, researchers found that to have a lot of impact on Twitter, you should try and reach the 1,000 follower threshold on Twitter. So for our project, I was using my personal account, which has over 1,000 followers to actually tweet about the project and so forth. And I noticed I got more engagement than our project account. One reason is because it's recommended to have at least 1,000 followers, so you should look to slowly grow your account to actually hit that threshold. We also use blogging in our project. We were using WordPress. There's other services available as well, free of charge, things like Medium. And by using WordPress, we were able to cross-post on Twitter and Facebook. And WordPress has its own community, so we were able to draw in different people than Facebook and Twitter who were interested in our content, who are visiting our pages. So this is just an example of Medium, and this is WordPress. We both have free versions which you can use. WordPress also has its own analytics as well, similar to Twitter Analytics, Facebook Analytics. You can go on to WordPress and then see the types of things that are happening. So just to summarize, we were using Twitter to send out tweets, network with other colleagues, other possible collaborators. We would use Facebook to cross-post, and we were tapping into a different network. We were then using WordPress, and we were blogging every 2 or 3 weeks and sharing those blogs onto different platforms using different hashtags. On the side, we were also working on a project app using a tool known as Buildfire. There's a number of other services available. And the idea here is that many people now own a smartphone. And by developing an app, it's a new, different type of more exciting engagement. So people can actually download the app, learn about the project, complete financial quizzes, have videos ready. It's in a more consumable way. A lot of people are used to downloading apps and consuming information in this way. So we thought it was a new kind of innovative and exciting method to communicate research. And I've not come across many other projects using an app for their research project. So we'll be releasing that fairly soon. So that's it for the presentation on some of the benefits of social media. So we have the ability to ask any questions. So we have one question. We can. So the question is: in the research, did you chart people's intentions after nudging them, or did you chart their behavior?
So we charted purely their behavior. As I said, so we first had them input in text boxes how much they wanted to save and how much they think their expenses were. And after they received the scenario, we displayed those values, but on a graphical interface, so that they can have, so that we could manage their behavior and just like really grabbing those data points and dragging them up and down. And so that they could also have a graphical interface and see how they could process this. So we just purely tracked their behavior. We did not ask any open-ended questions about intentions.
So I think that was it. I had one question on Twitter earlier today. So I was asking what platform the project benefited from the most in terms of either Facebook, Twitter, WordPress. I found that Twitter was potentially the best to actually get information out about the project. from the members of the public using Twitter. There's also a lot of academics as well who are clicking, liking, and following us, generating a lot of evidence. And also, when we launch our project app, I think through Twitter, we can actually promote it to the wider public and try and increase the number of downloads and so forth. But I'll probably say Twitter was one of the favorite platforms. I think that's it for the question.
Great. It's probably fair to say, just to say a couple of concluding comments. We would like to, of course, thank ING for the Think Forward initiative grant that we've received on this very important issue. And we're just starting our work. We have some incredible findings with the nudging that we have been able to do through the use of scenarios and putting people in this future-focused, plausible ways of thinking about different risks that could come and how that would impact their targets and predictions. What happens if they are broken down into categories versus overall summative kind of grouping. So we found different effects that we're going to talk about in our forthcoming publications, as well as provide that information in the app. So we're very excited to have started on this very interesting journey, but we have loads more to come. So watch this space.
So thank you very much for joining us. And the project slides, we'll be able to send those to you as well after the webinar as well. So thank you very much.